I think we met online as a as I commented on your video.
Yeah, exactly. I posted a video about understanding Islam with an analogy, and I laid it out in a manner that pretty much just says that when that house of Islam falls, it's not because of all these little individual small aspects of it. It's because the person who built it is at fault. In other words,
Correct.
that if Islam has bad ideas and it acts upon those bad ideas and bad things happen because of those bad ideas, it's not because of US foreign policy or poverty or lack of education or drought or climate change. It's because of the bad ideas.
Correct. I mean that's exactly what I wanted to respond to,
Mhm.
which is funny. You elegantly put it again as you did the first time. And so, do you want to talk about this?
Actually, I want to
And the
kind of,
second point, that I wanted to address that you mentioned is that the difference between Muhammad when he was in Mecca and then when he was in Medina.
yeah,
One
that's
one time
something.
he was a nice guy, and then he just turned, you know.
Yeah, something we'll definitely touch on. But first, a little bit about you. You call yourself an independent Muslim, and in the Independent Muslim show, the first one you did, you went over a bunch of reasons as to why you have labeled yourself that. And I would like you to kind of go over some of those points here.
Well, the idea came about right after 9/11. I mean, when I saw 9/11, I'm an IT guy. I just went out and bought the domain name Independent Muslim, and I started putting stuff on it, my view of what's going on. And then I let it go because I was going through immigration process. So
Mhm.
I said, people convinced me that it's not a good idea, and I guess I let it go. So when the Arab Spring started again, I looked up the domain name and nobody took it. I was like, I guess nobody's interested in being independent Muslim. So I took it again to kind of have an independent view, just saying I'm independent. I don't have any affiliation to anyone. I'm just a Muslim. But then the idea started to develop a little bit more in my head, and now I see there is a need to, I don't want to say start a sect. This is not my intention, but I want to start a new way of understanding Islam from based on mathematics. And I believe that I can prove that because I'm writing a book about it, and hopefully it'll be the foundation of why all Muslims today should be independent Muslims. Because first they're not united. So if they're not united, they're all independent groups and individuals. I mean, and
All
the
right.
reason they need to be united. I'm not calling them to be united or not. This is not. I don't have a political agenda. I'm just describing what's going on today in the Muslim world. They're technically all divided into Shia, Sunni, Wahhabi. They're divided by nations into kingdoms and republics and who knows what. So there's no coherent this Arabic term that they use, ummah. Have you heard that before?
I have it. Do you want to describe what Ummah means?
It just means a nation.
Okay.
See, so I developed all these tactics. So I'm against Arabic. You sound like a Yiddish schmuck when you use Arabic. Arabic would be something like Sharia law. It would be like Khilafa. It could be all these terms that have English meanings. Sharia means precedence. That's it. So the precedence of Muhammad. That's what. So it's not the law of Muhammad. It's the precedence of Muhammad. What he did, which
Mhm.
what I would like to talk about because it kind of explains. And everything can be resolved by one little statement. Islam is a theocratic republic.
Yeah, and that's a statement I've seen you say several times throughout, and to which the very concept I take umbrage with, but we'll get there. There's another question I actually have for you before we do. Um, you mentioned that you were originally from Syria before you came to the United States.
Correct.
Okay. Um, Syria, very long time, Ba'athist regime, acclaimed secular regime. well, of course, that's anything but, because it required party worship, something I'm sure you.
No. There
No.
was no party worship. It's 100% secular. We had a communist concepts. I grew up saying in school, وحدة حرية اشتراكية, unity, liberty, and I guess collectiveness or socialism, or you know whatever it is, not communism, not socialism. I
Mhm.
mean, that was the idea, and that's what they, there was religion was not part of it. That's the whole idea that Syria has so many different religions and so many different ethnic backgrounds, and especially my city. I grew up in Aleppo, and Aleppo took in huge amount of Armenians who are 100% Christians, and they have their churches. So there was a lot of tolerance for different religions, different ideas. It's the Muslim Brotherhood that ruined Syria,
Hmm.
and the reason I left Syria is right after the 80s, when they tried to take over the government, and I saw them on the ground blowing up stuff. Um, I didn't want to side with the government because the government came and crushed them, and so that was even more horrifying for me. But as I grew older and I lived in a republic in the United States, where I understand the concept of a republic, I understand the concept of people loving their nation and all this stuff. I realized what he was doing was right, and actually, the Arab Spring proved that those guys are criminals. You know,
Hmm.
and it goes back to the idea of a republic, because if you think of Islam as a republic is by the people for the people. You don't establish a republic by forcing the republic, then it becomes a dictatorship. So it's a very
Yes,
fine line.
and that's why I made the comment about dictatorships are rarely, I would say, secular. They may appear on surface to be secular, but frequently dictatorships can only survive if they involve some degree of either state or party worship. That, by definition, undermines the secular aims of a government. It may not value a religion per se over top of others, but it most certainly can value itself over all other beliefs, especially if that particular religion or belief set is viewed to be a threat to the state.
Well, here's the thing. You grew up in an environment where you're not under threat, not an imminent threat. But
Not the same you were, absolutely not. No.
right, when you are in the Middle East and you're in a state of war with Israel, for whatever reason that is, we can talk about that. But that just tense. It's very difficult to have an election where everybody's going to come to elect, to where everybody's going to be able to nominate, and you have a freedom. It's more tight because you're in a state of war. It's a cold war, and those societies are different than the Western societies. Um, they're more traditional. So to have somebody like Assad, uh, he had a coup. I mean, it was a coup. He took over the government. But if you look at the history before, they were having many different presidents come and go, and they were being puppets. So
Hmm.
he came in and he took over the government. I don't necessarily agree with the Ba'ath Party. I don't agree with them at all. I left the country. I immigrated out of the entire culture. I said I don't really care.
Okay.
You know.
Now, when you were in Syria, you born, raised there. Did you or your parents have a particular sect? Were you a Shia, a Sunni?
Yeah, Sunni.
You were Sunni, okay. And that Sunni, if I'm correct, is the majority of Islam today.
I guess.
It's, yeah, no, it's a tough call because you got to look at each state, and then
I
there's
mean, no,
always
no.
false reportings and whatnot. But
I think the lines are getting blurred every day now, and there's a shift, and there's all kind of stuff because these positions are now becoming political. They're not ideological, although they are, and because politics and religion is tied together once you come to the Abrahamic faith.
yeah, and that's someone like Bill Warner for the Center for Political Islam makes the case that the Meccan Muhammad was very much about theology. He was religion, he was spirituality, but the Medinan Muhammad became extremely political, and the majority of the works within the Quran within the Hadith and with the Surah or Sunnah, sorry, were ultimately directed towards how to govern a nation under Islam.
Right.
Hmm.
And from my perspective, that was the idea. So and this is part of my book. Um, Muhammad got the message that he is supposed to establish a theocracy, and it's
Hmm.
supposed to be a republic. So that means he has to get the people to agree that they want to have a theocracy. Now that
Yes.
didn't happen in Mecca. So
No.
no,
13 years, 150 followers, and 4 wives.
correct. So not four wives.
Really? I thought he had 4 wives by the time he
No,
left.
no. The reason he left Mecca is his wife died.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and
Well,
his wife
and
died
people were getting
because
kind of annoyed with him on the street corner preaching every day.
well, I mean, yeah, exactly.
he was he was thrown out.
No. Actually, he was. They had a economical embargo, and she got sick from lack of food. I mean, this is a desert environment, so
Hmm.
they eventually pushed him out to the point where he was isolated, and he couldn't communicate with the caravans coming to Mecca and everything. And his wife became so sick, and that was what actually broke the economical um, embargo on them. And then eventually she died, and that's when he left. But he didn't leave because she died. He left because Abu Bakr, his best friend, eventually, and the effort of his best friend eventually found a city that said, we will adopt the theocracy. Okay, and so when he moved there, now the theocracy is established. Okay, now it's a completely different laws.
Hmm.
It, okay, so that's the main problem that it's not the main problem. They don't want to say Islam is a theocratic republic. Okay, because if you say that, it's gonna have a serious impact on how you view it. So they say Sharia law, they speak Arabic, they all this stuff because it's
Well, they use the term caliphate ultimately to kind of describe a single nation that may have individual rulings underneath it, but are governed by the caliph to.
and that's not part of Islam. And also that's not part of Islam because Islam expects multiple nations, not one ruler. This the concept of us being different nations is mentioned in the Quran. So this idea of being one nation is actually messianic, not Islamic,
Hmm.
because because if you because the whole idea it's a republic. So what if you're an island? You can't have a republic. You got to follow somebody all the way in the Holy Land somewhere. If you're in
Hmm.
Hawaii, really? I mean, how does that work? And if we are created as races and colors and different physical attributes that really affect the way we live, you know, I mean, it's not about racism here, but different races have different traditions and different customs and different things based on their physical, whether the food they eat, the way they build their homes, everything. So you really, it's not a cookie cutter, but a republic is a cookie cutter where everybody gets together and they agree their decision versus having a king who says, it's my way today.
Yes, which is always of grave concern for individuals like, well, I guess I would say both of us, being you're American now and believe very strongly in liberty. You don't
Right.
want a on high individual speaking down to you. Now, I noticed on your channel, the Independent Muslim, you have a short video where you're on a beach in Syria in about 4 years ago, correct?
That was right before the revolution.
Yeah, I was going to say you must have been there right before everything went sideways.
Look, this thing was so well calculated. It was classic. It's a Hollywood production. It was so orchestrated. Syria was so prime because almost 60% were youth
Hmm.
and a lot of guys, not that many women. It's more men. And seeing a revolution happen in another country, it's just gonna explode in a young person's head, and so that's what they played on. But it was funded from outside. Al Jazeera was fabricating. I saw all that in front of me.
Yeah, you were there probably close enough before everything went terribly wrong that you probably had a sense that it was going to happen in the air as you were wandering around. Now, were you visiting your hometown of Aleppo at the time?
Right, right,
Okay, so wow, you were that's ground zero effectively
right,
for
right, right.
what much what
And
we saw.
it became ground zero.
Yeah.
And I still have relatives over there.
Oof.
I mean, I still have family, and I still have property, and my parents are homeless. But regardless to all of that, uh, um, I stood with the Republic, and people thought I stood with Assad. I said, I'm standing with the Republic, and people don't understand that. Like the
Well,
Republic has no value. The Syrian Arab Republic has a value to me.
okay, so you all right, you let's see if I understand this. You like the idea of Syria as a nation, but you do agree that the governance needs to change, although not by the measures which we were seeing and have been seeing for the
No, this
last
is about
4
oil.
years.
This is about oil, and this is about money, and this serves Israel, and this serves a lot of people except Syria. And it's total BS that this was for the Syrian people just to get liberty, because they had a lot of liberty. Assad was really a nice guy. I mean, his father is extremely smart, but he made mistakes that he took the liberty of people to talk. That was his biggest mistake.
Yes.
He stopped the press. He controlled the press, and that gave a generation of people who are angry. Then you add to that the religious zealots, which he was against. And I grew up in a family where my dad said, these are crazy people. They're pushing people to war, and there's no need to go to war. And there's a lot of people who are rallying for the Holy Land. We got to get the Holy Land back, you know. And Israel is a nuclear power. Assad understood that, and there was no point to provoke a nuclear power. But the people inside were boiling based on that, and a generation that came later, that was a big mistake. That cost the country. So it was a stupid mistake, I guess. That's why I called it stupid. But I don't think Assad. I thought, as I grew older, I thought Assad was a very smart guy, and thank God his son took over. This son in particular, because he had another son being prepped up to be the president, and I think he would have been dangerous. But this guy was not even in the picture, and he's a really nice guy, and he opened up the country. And I was there in 2009 to set up. I invested money, and I wanted to move or to establish a base there between the U.S. and Syria. But the revolution started, or not 2009. I was there in 2010.
Hmm. Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's move on from your time in Syria and the recent happenings there, and let's get in more to the meat of the conversation about Islam and to a term that you have labeled Arab English, which is the usage, to best of my knowledge, the usage of Arab words to be then misconstrued for particular ends, and it's better just to use a direct English translation.
Well, here's the thing. This started by the Muslims, because because the majority of Muslims, and here's I'm attributing the cultures now, right?
Hmm.
Majority of Muslims don't speak Arabic, so they don't know what these terms mean. So instead of them taking the risk to explain them, they decided to use Arabic words, and knowing the Western culture and how sarcastic they are, they're like, yeah, you want to talk like that? Of course I'll talk like that with you. And then nobody will understand, and you're going to look stupid. And that's exactly what happened. But,
Hmm.
if you're smart, why would you use that? Means the English language is not encompassing enough, or broad enough to be able to uh, uh, take in any different ideas. And this is not true. Sharia means precedence.
Yeah,
Khilafa
and that
means
was the question I
election.
was going to ask about is over in my atheistic corner, the best scholars that I have been able to read upon, like Bill Warner, like Ibn Barak, have labeled Sharia not as precedent but as law. It is Islamic law, not Islamic precedent, not Muhammad's precedent, but Islamic law.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
how do we get that difference? How do you come to the idea or the definition that it is precedent?
because again, you don't speak Arabic, so these people don't speak Arabic, or if they speak Arabic, they don't understand English. So it's either one, and I can prove it to you by going on Google and writing Sharia of Moses, or Sharia of Abraham, or Sharia of Noah. You know, these are not laws; these are precedents. I mean, from
Okay.
the English language, from the Arabic language, when I read it, I see it, it's a precedence. It's not, only God puts the law. These guys set the precedence. If God said, uh, um, be nice, then these guys will set the precedence as to be nice. So if they're not nice, they're not following the law. So, we set the Constitution, we wrote the law, and then we see precedents. In court, we see precedents in presidents. This is how it's interpreted.
And the expectation is to follow those precedents, and a failure to do so would be a violation of that precedent, which in turn becomes a violation of the original law.
Yeah, well, Muhammad married four women. Everybody's not following that precedence, and if they're going to follow it, good luck. You know, So I mean, Muhammad was a lot of rocks were thrown at him, and nobody followed that precedence. Muhammad was kicked out of his hometown, and the Muslims in Palestine are not following that precedence. So if you're going to put that as a law, I'll make life so difficult because you can't do what he did. You're given a precedence to measure by, not to consider it a law, because that's why he gave you a human. Because why would you need a precedence if the law is there? Because the law has a
Probably,
spirit. Because the law has a spirit to it.
yeah, and that's what I'm going to say, is probably because despite our best efforts, divine law tends to be frequently open for interpretation, and it's very difficult to take the absolute word of God, and we've even seen it through any type of religious text studies, that there's lots of people who had a very clear divine commandment that went against it. Just think about um, how Moses
So
came down with his tablets, and it was very clear, "Thou shalt not kill." And then he sees a reason to kill somebody, and he goes up and asks God, "What do I do?" And God says, "Kill him."
or thou shalt not kill, and then God commands Abraham to kill his son.
Yes, yeah, there you go. Don't do that. Oh yeah, do it now. Oh wait, crap. I overplayed my hand, and now I got to send Gabriel down to stop him. Okay, well, there's just other terms here. Like we know that. So Sharia is the precedent set, and if you are a most
Well,
Muslims, I would be confident to say, based upon Pew Research data, view Sharia as, at a minimum, a personal guide to their religious life, and in many cases, the law or precedent for which a nation should be run. And they use this argument mirrored with another Arab English word called jahiliya, to which I understand is of ignorance.
it's
So
ignorant. It's called ignorance.
yes, so
But
the Constitution
yeah. But
in
if you know,
case would be of ignorance as compared to Sharia.
and if you know Arabic, the word ignorance is also used for war. War is considered ignorance. I just wanted to mention that because if you don't know Arabic,
Hmm. That's
the word, yeah,
that's curious, isn't
yeah,
it?
it is. It is. The word jahl is actually means war. And there's a poem where it says, وَإِذَا جَهِلُوا فَنَجْهَلُ فَوْقَ جَهْلِهِمْ جَهْلًا. If they go to war with us, we will go over their wars with more war. But he used the word ignorance. So if they use ignorance, we're going to be more ignorant, and we're going to cap their ignorance. you know.
Gotcha.
So but all of this Okay, if you look at it from a different term, ignorance, what he's saying is we were tribes fighting each other. And the republic is a better form than being a tribe fighting each other. Because again, Muhammad was coming in with a concept of a republic. That's why they tell you there's no difference between an Arab and a non-Arab, black and white and all this stuff, because they're explaining a republic. But at the same time, they misunderstand that if you don't understand Arabic, you really cannot have that republic, because the Quran says it has to be an Arabic republic. And that's a kind of a,
Yeah, and not only that, my understanding of the readings and study of it is the original writings of the Quran were of a dialect of Muhammad's dialect from a small tribe that has since ceased. No one speaks that particular dialect of Arabic anymore, which means most, actually, all people who try to read the Quran in Arabic, or those who take it and translate it out, are actually not 100% certain of particular idioms which exist in the Quran as a result of that dead dialect now.
that's not true, because the dialect, the Quran is independent from the dialect of Muhammad himself. It was Arabic, and actually it came and revolutionized Arabic and defied
Well,
their Arabic. It
that's only
for
half
example, no. I just want to tell you, just so you understand how it works. The word for a book is kitab, and it comes from kataba, which means to write. So a book is the written. That would be in English, would be the things that was written. Okay? But then the Quran came and said, this is not a book, this is the Quran. It's the thing you read, which a term they never used, because why would say this is the thing you read? This is the thing you wrote. This is the written. So the Arabic came and changed the whole logic of things for them. So it was not specific to that tribe. It used Arabic alphabet, it used Arabic words and Arabic idioms, correct. For example, the big thing that I tried to say, where I tried to say the Quran cannot be translated, because the Quran cannot be
Yes,
translated.
I've heard this argument from many people, but please go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. The Quran cannot be translated because there's a verse that says nobody understands the Quran except God. And you can try to interpret it, but you don't. You can't. So
That that seems unnecessarily restrictive to something that is supposed to be the final, complete, and unalterable word of God. It's
well,
kind of hard to base your life upon it if you can't interpret it in
no, I
any way.
mean it's true. It's true if God says don't kill. I mean, if you can't interpret that, then well, let me set the stage for you, which something that blew my mind when I realized it as I was reading the Quran, because I spend a long time reading the Quran. I'm very familiar with it. I listen to it. I don't read it as much as I listen to it, and I went through a period of my life where I listened to it a lot. I just wanted to contain every single word and then swift through them one by one. And
Mm.
there's a concept here that's very important. And I can go to, I haven't talked to you anything about mathematics in regards to this, but it makes sense when you superimpose mathematics on top of these ideas, or you superimpose these ideas on top of mathematics. Um, if there is a hell and heaven, okay, and we're not going to talk what they are, but just go along with the story. And let's suppose, because life is fractal, life is repeating itself. So there's a possibility there is a life after this life. Okay. And if there's two places to go to, and we can talk about why and all the probabilities and all this stuff, but if there's two places to go to, if hell is a bad place, let's say, then no one is going to go there and think they are smart. And that means God is dividing people to smart and stupid eventually. And he says that in the Quran.
Okay.
Okay. So intelligence is really the key here. So if you're reading a scripture and you're not able to comprehend it, it's not God's fault. you're stupid. And I don't mean you, but whoever is
Well, you're not
interpreting it.
wrong.
Yeah, but it's not that God is wrong. It's you are stupid. And I figured that out because I figured out that God gave us a technology to be smart. And you're gonna go, what does that mean? Actually, because I started thinking, is like, okay, if we're divided stupid and smart, then why does God, how can God divide us to stupid and smart? These stupid people have no way of becoming smart, or do they? And then I found out that praying the actual Muslim prayers makes you smarter. And I know this is counterintuitive because the Muslim world doesn't sound very smart, but they don't do it right. But when you bow and you put your forehead on the ground, you actually saturate the frontal lobes with blood, and you need oxygen for the frontal lobes to function properly, because this is where you make decisions. So if you have, and criminals have small frontal lobes. So if you do that on a regular basis, you're most likely, because the gravity and how much, because if you do it right, you get a head rush when you stand up. um, Technically you're enlarging your, I don't know, this is a theory, but I'm assuming it enlarges your frontal lobe, and it's saturated with blood where you think properly, because there's no way that me praying is going to make God's kingdom any bigger. There's no way that me jumping up and down on the ground making yoga positions has any impact on the creator if he exists. It has to do for me. So again, intelligence is the key here. So if you're reading verses and you're confused, it's you. And that's why translations is only the perspective. So I go back to the verse that I always talk about. There's a verse that says, Alam nashrah laka sadrak. Didn't we expand your chest?
Yes.
And this is not how it's translated. It should be, didn't we put you at ease? And
Yes, and
didn't
that
we
well, that's the effects of an idiom being written into a book of was some 1400 plus years ago, and then we were trying to interpret what it could mean today.
correct?
Right.
But that language is not dead. It's really not dead. But I agree with you. Certain words took me a very, very, very long time to
Well,
find out what they
and
mean.
this is what I mean by that. So last night I'm at work and I say to one of my coworkers, "Yeah, I'm feeling kind of bagged," and he gives me this askance look and completely unaware of what I mean. I'm from Western Canada. He is from the American South. So we are having a problem here. We both speak English as our first language. English is a very well established and taught language in schools and universities. We're both university educated, and he didn't understood what I meant. This idiom, bagged, comes from a bag skate, a hockey term, that you're so tired after you're done your skate that you can't pick up your freaking hockey bag full of equipment, which
Right.
is truly, that's just how you grew up and where I'm from. And so he was unaware of that. That's the idiom problem that's going to come out. Whereas you know that other places in the United States, if you say, I'm bagged, people think bag, old bag, like an old woman or a miserable, upset lady that's usually a little
Yeah,
advanced in
like
age.
old bag. Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, the
old bag,
expression old
right?
bag.
So that's difficult to parse out when you're sitting there trying to read, especially when you're trying to do it in a scholarly manner where you have, and you fall into this category yourself, individuals who focus more on the artistic side of the writing rather than the content of the writing.
Right, but then it falls back to the intelligence of that person. And there's another thing that you might not be able to pick up because you don't know Arabic, is that the Quran is very rich. It's a big book, and terms are repeated multiple times. So you can take the intersection and go, okay, this is what it means. For example, I found out that the devil is going to be contained, and that's a big thing. It's contained, the word contained. So he's not damned, he's going to be contained. And this falls into mathematics. This is why I went back to mathematics, because I said if everybody's going to interpret it their own way, then either there is no standard, and I can't accept that because the creator has to have a standard. So there's got to be a standard somewhere. And I found out that mathematics actually fits. and he's the god of mathematics. That's, I don't know if you see that poster that I made.
I haven't yet. No.
I believe the God of Abraham is the God of mathematics, and when you go into what is called pseudoscience right now, but it's not. It's Nassim Harameini says that the Star of David is in 3D, which is the star tetrahedron, is the structure of the vacuum in the universe. So all this knowledge could be really mathematical that we have that pretty much turned up to symbols. Like, for example, why do Muslims run around in circles around a cube in Mecca?
Following the track of the sun's rising and setting.
No, the cube represents something, and this is what my book is all about. Actually, I'll share this with you because it's important. The cube represents the Republic. The
Okay.
cube, because you only have two, and my book is about fractals. You only have 4 prime fractals in this universe that governs the entire universe. The straight line, the circle, the equilateral triangle, and the square. And these are bold statements. But, you know, I'm going to put my book out there and get chewed. But
Isn't that the way to do it?
yes. But I really believe, and you know, I'm coming from a mathematical perspective and trying to prove it mathematically. But anyway, so these four patterns governs the entire universe, and including human behavior. So you can have a government only 2 ways: either a triangle or a square. Either it's a kingdom or a republic. That's it.
Well, I wanna just read a quick.
Because you can't have a straight line as a government, because you're talking about a collective, and a circle is the basic standard, and that would be for a tribe where you have the chief is in the middle and everybody's around in a circle. But if you want to have a hierarchy or structure, you only have the equilateral triangle or the square, and either you have a kingdom or a republic. For example, Canada is technically a kingdom.
Yes. Despite their best efforts in 1982 to sign away from it, they decided to stay very much in the Commonwealth.
I mean, yeah. So and you can have a different variation of kingdoms, and you have different variations of republics, but technically either one man rules or the collective rules.
Now, I still sticking on just the language of the Quran. This is a very short excerpt from Hitchens' God is Not Great, when he's talking about the Quran being borrowed from Christian and Jewish traditions. And he writes, "It is said by some Muslim authorities that during the first caliphate of Abu Bakr, immediately after Muhammad's death, concern arose that his orally transmitted words might be forgotten. So many Muslim soldiers had been killed in battle that the number who had the Quran safely lodged in their memories had become alarmingly small. It was therefore decided to assemble every living witness, together with pieces of paper, stones, palm leaves, shoulder blades, ribs, and bits of leather, on which sayings had been scribbled, and given them to Zayd ibn Thabit, one of the Prophet's former secretaries, on the authoritative collection. Once this had been done, the believers had something like an authorized version." And he goes on to say that there were some 200,000 plus unique phrases that were placed, and at the end, only about 10,000 were kept, comprising about 80,000 words, and the other 190,000 were viewed to be apocryphal. How can, and this is a central question that many atheists like myself have when we're talking about Islam, how can we have an oral, Arabic culture for a very long time was an oral culture. Archaeological and sociological evidence indicate that it was an oral tradition culture. So writing wasn't central to the Arabic life for some time. And
This is why the Quran started with read.
Yes, and well, that's also how Gabriel first came down to Muhammad, as laid out in the early part of the Quran, where Gabriel commands him to read 3 times.
And followed by God taught with the pen. So reading and writing is a very important principle.
Now, and something that Muhammad most certainly knew how to do, despite other people's protesting that he was an illiterate goat herder. He was not. He was a merchant, and I don't know very many merchants that would be able to get by without taking care of their business accounts if you didn't know how to write. Now, my concern here is of the labeling of apocryphal statements. You said that Sharia is precedent. It is God's law as interpreted and put into action by men. So you
By
have
a prophet. By a prophet.
by a prophet. Now, the prophet had died, and now you have the next in line, more or less, who had to bring someone in to make sure the prophet's life would be appropriately and properly saved. Now, the Quran, the
No.
purpose of it was to do so, and
This is
that was lost due to these people who were dying in battlefields. So that's why they had to assemble an accredited version of it.
No, that's your assumption that you put. You don't have to emulate the prophet 100% because you can't. You know, that whole thing that I got to emulate the prophet to the T, obviously you can't. Because he started a theocracy and you didn't. He did all kind of stuff, and plus it's not a competition. You're supposed to use his life as a model to solve your problems. You're not going to necessarily have the same problems that he did, and that's the same concept of using the little stick that the Muslims clean their teeth with. You know, like the prophet cleaned his teeth with a little stick of something, which is very good for the body and has antibiotics, and not antibiotics, but all kind of bacteria that is good for digestive. But brushing your teeth is the same concept as well. You know,
Yeah,
using toothpaste
absolutely.
and electric, you know, so for you to go and say, I got to do it exactly the way he did it, no, you're using his model to see if you can solve your problems, but you're not going to encounter the same problems. But the most important precedence that he did is he didn't name a successor. That's what made it a republic. And he didn't have a son. Although he had two of them, they both were killed by God, you know, like.
Yes, he had two of them, which was the original split of Islam. That's where we did get the Sunni and Shia, is the debate between his lineage. It was a unique problem to Islam that wasn't held by Judaism or Christianity, because Moses entirely fictitious and Jesus didn't have any children, or unless you read Dan Brown, then you can believe all sorts of ridiculous things. But the problem I have is within content analysis. If we take the Quran and we take 10 individuals who are very smart, who speak both Arabic and English,
They'll
and they
give you 10
translate it,
different interpretations.
it will give you 10 interpretations, but then
Right.
you can take each of them, analyze them, and then see what the numbers are. You're a math guy. You know that numbers can be very powerful. Within the Quran, we know, and this is just the Quran, there is demands 91 times that Muslims are to imitate Muhammad in every way, not to be as close as you can, but directly. This
No,
is
no.
these are 91.
Give me one example, and I'll look it up
Let's
and,
get
and,
to
and tell you how. Yeah.
let's
Get
see
down to
here. Chapter 69, verse 9. Pharaoh 2, and those who thrived before
hold
him.
on. 69 what?
69, chapter 69, verse 9.
Verse 9. Okay. Go ahead.
Pharaoh 2, and those who thrived before him, and the overthrown cities, all committed sin and disobeyed the messenger sent by their Lord, referring to Muhammad. That is why he
No, refer
punished.
to Moses, not Muhammad. This is referring to Moses. He's talking about Moses, and then Moses. Muhammad never met the Pharaoh. He's talking about Moses.
No, this okay. Then, oh, let's go down the list. There's so many good ones. History of Messenger.
Yeah, but again, I really want to tell you, if you're reading a translation, you're you're in a infinite loop of
Well, then
hypocrisy.
this is the problem that we run into inevitably. Then you have to say that those who do not speak Arabic could never be Muslims because they could never properly understand the
Welcome to
Quran.
the independent Muslim.
Yes,
Welcome to
and
the independent
yes,
Muslim. Because
and this is what I'm trying to piece out.
if you depend on a translation of the Quran, you're depending on the perspective of the translator, not the Word of
Exactly.
God, and thus you have no access to the Word of God. You're taking someone else's interpretation, and then you're building your own interpretation on what he built on.
Yes,
Right.
and this is why.
I read. Yeah, this is why when I look at this verse that you looked at, I go, well, but this is talking about Moses, and you might not be able to see that with a translation because the translator took your way of thinking in a different directions because he put his own perspective. So from my perspective, I don't see that I'm supposed to emulate the prophet. But for example, I'm not a leader. So how am I emulating the prophet? Let's say I'm just a guy. I'm just a bum in the street.
Mhm.
I mean, but I can emulate his generosity. I can emulate his tolerance, whatever it is. But also, I just want to tell you, there's a huge distinction. Okay, there's a huge distinction in the Arabic language when God says, "You, the believers," or "you as an individual." Because if he's talking you, the believers, he's talking to the theocracy only. These are theocracy. Like, for example, if somebody stole, you cut their hand. That's not for the individual. If you own a store and somebody stole a candy, you don't jump with a machete from behind the counter and chop their hand.
That's an interesting point you bring up because this is what most atheists, I can comfortably say, have umbrage with when it comes to these scriptures is you can read it as strike at the hand, right? That could mean smack their hand. That could mean metaphorically use the law to punish them. It could also mean to pull out the blade and sever the hand from the body. There's no certainty
Then
in
you have
that.
the precedence. You have the
You have the
precedence of
precedent,
Muhammad, and
exactly.
Muhammad
But
said, "If my
this
daughter Fatima stole, I will cut her hand."
Yes, and if we did not have the book originally, this wouldn't be a debate. We could use the Enlightenment to bring about these laws. And this is what most atheists run into when it comes to managing major scriptural interpretations is as long as the book exists, it doesn't matter that you, Cam, are the independent Muslim and you're going to give the most generous, kindest reading that you can and emulate only the most golden parts of Muhammad's life and to be your own person in the process. I'm not worried about you. My concern comes from individuals like we've seen from the Muslim Brotherhood who use the harshest interpretations they possibly can because a book was labeled holy. And then they then claim special privilege to that book because anyone who interprets it will not get the full story.
Well, okay. So I told you before we started this podcast that
Mhm.
everything is on the open with me. So I'm going to share with you what I'm doing with you.
Yes.
I'm using your momentum, what you just said, that momentum that you just created, which is created by a lot of atheists. I'm using that momentum to flip the table on everyone. Since I'm independent, I really don't care.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm flipping the table on everyone. But here's the thing where I'm encountering, or actually I'm exposing the hypocrisy of some of the atheists, not all of them. But there's a good portion of them where if you throw the same thing and you say, okay, well, let's take the story of Abraham. You know, it's evil. It's an evil act to attempt to kill your child.
Mhm.
It's an evil act.
Objectively, evil act. You don't need a religion to tell you that it's evil.
Correct. I mean, and even when God said, "Live, prosper, and multiply," you have this command that is counterintuitive, right? And the story is explained in my book, by the way. There's a sane version of this story, but that's why I'm turning the table and I'm using this momentum, and then things collapse. They're like, "Oh no, you're more evil." Well, wait a second. Okay, how about this mentality? A man rapes a woman. So we take an innocent man who never done anything, has nothing to do with it, and we punish him for the crime of the other man who raped the woman. Does that sound fair
Of course not. That's why we
or
have
moral?
appropriate
Right.
jurisprudence.
Correct. But then you have Christianity based on that concept. You know, you do your crimes, but then
Yes.
Jesus was punished for it, so don't worry about it.
Mm.
So if you're attacking Islam and you're singling out Islam, then you're a hypocrite. Let's go after all of them, and that's when things collapse.
Yeah.
And so, right.
And
So
that's and this is actually, you've
this is
labeled the important trend within atheism. When new atheism began, it was a swing towards the original all religions are equally bad, right? This was well established. We had to talk about it all, with, especially in the West here, a special focus on Christianity. And then we kind of had its first major shift, and that's where guys like Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens turned slightly to say, actually, motherload of bad ideas comes from Islam. And for me, I'm now trying to take it back to the original place that says, no, all religions are equally bad. For the point I laid out earlier, is you can make the interpretation. As long as the commandment can stand, anybody can make an interpretation based upon it being holy and in the name of God, whatever book it's coming from, to utilize it to their own ends.
now there is something about my book and about my style of argument that we haven't got to, and I need to introduce you to, because this is very important. There's something called the abstract realm, right? The abstract,
Yes.
where it's just abstract ideas only. And the
Yes.
reason this exists, my argument about this is that there is no straight line in the universe made up of curved atoms. Okay, the atom is curved. The straight line is an abstract concept.
Hmm.
What you see is not a straight line. If you zoom in, it's going to be a circle, or some kind of a wavy thing, some kind of a curve.
Yes.
So so
Wavy, definitely.
right. So if we go, if we you know, so the straight line is based on, equality is based on the straight line. So there's a lot of concepts that are all in the abstract. The reason I wanted to say that is, what did you say earlier? I forgot. I went too much into my thought. Um,
Talking about how religions are.
yeah, exactly. How you interpret the scripture, that problem is not only limited to religion. So it's really unfair to single out religion and saying this is, because you look at the U.S. Constitution and people are fighting how to interpret it. And these are humans who wrote it. And they wrote it specifically for this country and specifically for these people and specifically, it's just so specific, and we still fight about it. And we have judges to interpret it and all this stuff. So that problem is not unique. And so your argument, let's banish this, it's really not a solid argument, because
It's
that's
not to banish, it's to well establish the inanity behind it, right? It's to lay out in sufficient argument that a particular set of ideas are less good than others.
well, secularism is the answer to that. That was our, because we couldn't agree on a god. Let's it's not the Jewish God. Well, even between Jews, Christians, and Muslims who worship the God of Abraham, they all point at each other as like, hey, this is not my God, and you're wrong about God, and all this stuff. And then you have the elephant God, and then you have no God, and so it's very difficult. Secularism is reasonable. That's why I don't support secularism, but I accept it, and I believe it works. It works in the U.S., except the nutty fundamentalists on the extreme right who but they skew they have the same problem that you're just describing. So I think it's a human problem. It's not a religious problem. Um, I think it is a problem, absolutely, and this is why I decided to look for a standard, because again, you're absolutely correct. I mean, I ran into that problem before within Islam, within my own community, when I was saying, look, you can't have a revolution. You cannot have an armed revolution and flip the country this way in Syria. And they said, yes, we can. God gave us the right. I'm like, what do you mean God gave you the right? Look at Muhammad. He tried so hard and they kicked him out. And God said, get out. Look at Abraham. He said, get out.
Well,
There was no prophet who set the precedence of a revolution. When the punishment came, it always came from God, not from the prophet.
am I to understand then, once Muhammad moved to Mecca, that it wasn't him who organized armies and people and grew the Arab Empire from just a small couple outposts, predominantly in Christian lands, to extending all the way from India to southern Spain? That was God that was commanding all that? Or was that Muhammad doing his interpretation of what God wanted, and the generals who supported Islam and the doctrine of Islam following Muhammad's death?
Okay, the difference is the perspective here, because I believe this is truth. You're looking at it as a fiction. You're trying to understand how the story is put together as a fiction.
Well, I'm trying to get your understanding of it. Someone who is a Muslim, who has done the reading of the Quran and who can give me a point on it. Because from my side of the fence, when we look at the writings of the Quran through content analysis, it is there. It is laid out. It says very clearly that it was Muhammad who did this. If Muhammad can bring around armed revolution and enter new cities and convert entire cities,
That's not true.
beheading 800 Jews, which is written, that is a story within the surah,
let me
then
explain to
I'm
you.
sure that Muhammad or the individuals in Syria can find religious justification for what they did.
Well, let me explain to you. Okay, again, it's because first I'm going to say this statement, and I don't really care what people say. 80% to 90% of Muslims are sheep. Okay, they're just following what they were told.
Mhm.
Okay, so they don't really understand Islam. You got like about 10% who understand, and they have, of course, 100 different versions of their
Which
understanding.
isn't too wrong, considering about 60% of Muslim men under the age of 50 in the otherwise lightly coined Muslim world are illiterate.
Right, and you have problems, you have political problems, you have social problems, you have economical problems, you have poverty, you have so much problems. Okay, so so uh, uh, the way to look at Islam is a continuation. Actually, the story starts with Abraham. It's very important that you understand that you cannot separate Islam from Judaism and Christianity.
No, that's well
That
established within the Quran.
Right. I mean, okay, so this is how the logic goes, and try to follow that simple logic. Humans have to organize. It's there's no doubt about that. It's I can show it to you mathematically. I can show it to you in nature. You have to organize.
It's
So
an evolutionary drive, yes.
no, it's just the nature of the beast, the nature of the universe. It's fractal. It's patterns repeating themselves, and so humans repeat themselves. That's what you do. You get married, you get a child that looks like you on different scale. That's a fractal. So so you have a fractal universe, and humans are fractals, and they're growing. So you have to organize them. You have two ways of organizing them. So the first message that God sent, because the first message that God sent with Noah said, organize. Everybody flipped the finger to Noah and said, we're not organizing. We just like it anarchy. We just like it the way we want. Get out of here. We don't want any of your stuff. So Noah said, I don't think we're going to get anything out of these people. So he wiped them out. I don't think it was
Yeah.
I don't think it was a universal, it didn't flood in Hawaii, but maybe I think when they said the world flooded, it talks about the world in the Middle East, that world.
Okay. Now, just a question, quick here for you. Do you believe that that was a story, or do you believe that was a historical event?
No, I believe I have to accept if it's mentioned in the Quran, then it has to be true to me,
Okay. Okay.
in my little bubble.
Okay.
Yeah. So Noah destroyed. Not Noah. God destroyed humanity and started again with Noah, just like it started with Adam and Eve. So that was the second reboot. Okay, so the first message was establish a kingdom, and that was the kingdom of the children of Israel. And that's God gave them the law. And the word theocracy was coined by a Jew named Joseph, who argued that unlike the other governments in the area, which was either democracy or um, um, autocracy or different forms, they had a unique form of government, which was a theocracy where God and his law was sovereign. And so the term theocracy was established by the Jews. That's why I can use it to say Islam is a theocratic republic. Now, that's the first message. Then Jesus came and said, the kingdom has ended. And we can talk about that. That's a major, serious problem that happened, because first they got a kingdom, humanity, they got a kingdom, and then God said the kingdom ends and we're going to start a new pattern, and it's going to be a republic. Okay, and
Mhm.
so what Muhammad started is a republic, and the messages that he sent to different nations, like the Romans, like the Persians, the message was, it started with, be peaceful, you be at peace. Aslim taslam. Okay, it's not like, hey, be a Muslim or so you be at peace. It says, be peaceful, you be at peace. So you're starting with peace, right?
Mhm.
Okay. And then the second thing, it says, we have a new religion by God. We would like to introduce it to you. Take it and govern by it. Okay. If you refuse, then we would like to come in as missionaries and explain our message to your people. If you refuse, then you must be oppressing your people from knowing the truth, and now we can declare war on you. Does that make sense? But that
Yes.
logic, but that logic is still present. Like today, we stand in the UN and says, "Hey, Assad is not really a good guy. He's an oppressor. We're going to invade his country." Saddam is not. So the logic is not off the wall. It's not like, whoa, what are you doing? It's just saying, hey, look, we have a different system. You're governing in a dictatorship. We're going to give the people a republic, and. So
Sure, but understand the difference that when we say Saddam Hussein has a history of using weapons of mass destruction against his own people, for almost engaging in ethnic cleansing when he targets the Kurds, and
which
we
we
have viewed
funded, which
as
we gave him all the stuff. He didn't
certainly
really
yes,
manufacture it. He didn't do any of this stuff.
sure,
It was just,
yeah.
we were
If
selling
if
him
I
all
give
this stuff.
if I give you a gun and you end up shooting somebody, am I at fault?
Yeah, if you know that I'm a crook and a thief and
Yeah,
I'm
see,
a criminal,
and
yeah,
that's
then
where
yes, you,
things
you
usually
are
go sideways.
incriminated.
Yes. Now,
But if you,
the point I'm trying to make is there are moral justifications which can be argued at an international level to justify invading another nation. When you talk about, well, we're missionaries and give us a chance to speak to your people,
just if you say, give me a chance to speak to your
give me a chance to,
people.
and they say no, and they create, okay, well, then this is also called the passive aggressive strategy, and it's a very powerful strategy for war, is then you can implicate a nation for not doing enough for its people, where you can then have the people agitated by that without you actually engaging into any type of direct confrontation. But
Welcome to international law.
yeah, but then you can actually agitate to the point where you, as you just said, you can, if you don't let that happen, then we will cause war. We will invade. We
Or
will
you can
begin
laugh at
rioting.
us. You can let us in, and we talk about our fantasy god, and you laugh at
Mm.
us, and you kick us out. And
Yes. Yeah, sure. That worked for a while until Medina.
no, 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 and we will never fight you. That's it. If you say, hey, come on in, well, who cares? A lot of people come into the U.S. with different ideas. We don't care. Like the Christians are living in a republic, and they're praying for a king to come and wipe out our republic, where every
Yeah.
knee will bow. You
Yeah.
know, you
A
know.
frightening thought.
Right, right. So I mean, you're looking at it as a part of aggression. Why? It's knowledge. Maybe we're right. Maybe there is a God. Maybe you're oppressing your people from knowing the truth. I mean, it it, it becomes a judgment call, and what I'm trying to say is, what Muhammad came with is not off the wall. it still can be explained in today's logic. Now, whether you agree there is a God or not, and he interferes with man's affair or not, he gave him a law to have a structure for a government or not, that's all, that's all personal, because obviously I'm not asking to establish a theocracy. Now, yes, I have a problem with people, and I believe that there is a serious problem which you're concerned about, and I share your views, that there are some nuts who believe that God wanted us to establish a theocracy, and they can chop your head if you don't belong to the theocracy.
Yes.
Absolutely, these are criminals. There's no doubt about it.
But they
But
find that justification within the same holy book that you refer to as being a source for peace and wisdom.
the same justification that Bush and the NATO found in the United Nations law, where they can actually go and invade Libya or Syria or whatever. I mean, the same thing. It's a human thing. It has nothing to do with God.
But
You
if
can
if
you
if
can
I'm
tell me.
referring to an international piece of legislation to justify my acts, that is a document built of consensus of men. It's different where a guy comes into your area and holds up a book and says, "This is the last, final, unalterable word of God. This is complete. You never need to worry about any more addendums to it. What's written in here is all you need to know about life. You will follow it, or else." That's not a
What do you mean? Or else that's not God's word, because God said you're free. You can believe or you don't have to believe. So you're contradicting yourself. No, but if God wanted us to believe,
No,
why
I
don't
don't
we?
think God has ever at any point said that we can choose how we want to live. Because I don't think it's a free choice if there's coercion involved. You
Of
can choose
course, it's
not
a
to
free choice.
believe, but I'm going to torture you for the
It,
rest of your life.
no, 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 no. Of course you can. Now, look, if the
That's a
world is,
degree of coercion that is unacceptable, and that undermines what free choice actually stands for.
there's no free choice.
Exactly.
This
Especially
is
when there's coercion.
Yeah, but no, no, but this world is not a free choice. There's no free choice. The free choice is an illusion. There's no free choice.
Yeah,
This
I don't
is
disagree with you on
this is a simulation. This universe is a simulation, and the only reference you have is a function of your memory, is time. So because you have a memory, you perceive time, and you see what's going on. But this is an illusion. What what's really happening is God is showing you, not you and the people around you, but not showing him. He knows. He's showing you how you would behave if you put in an environment. Because if at the end he's going to separate, he's going to have an argument. He's like, look, we ran the program and this is the result you came out. You're defective.
It seems almost capricious. No, it doesn't seem that's wholly
What, what,
capricious.
what's capricious mean?
It's to toy with, to play with, to treat with disregard for one's own amusement.
No, 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 no. Okay, so let's go back to this. Do you believe there's good and evil in this world? Can you distinguish that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe a second life is possible?
I don't know because I can't
Mathematically,
know.
there has to be a possibility, because why not?
Well,
What would stop it?
I don't necessarily agree with that statement. I think
Because
it's
everything is
possible in a sense, but because none of us have ever been able to traverse it and come back from the
so
other side of
okay.
the veil to let us know, it's impossible to say.
It's not delusional. It's a logical leap. It's not a delusional leap. I'm not saying there's a pink
This
unicorn.
is where agnostic comes in, and the term agnostic is to not know, and I would be agnostic on the idea of there being an afterlife. Not
Correct,
sure.
but
Yes.
let's go with the
No.
possibility. Let's entertain the possibility just for philosophy.
Sure.
Okay, so if there is a second life, you have two options now. Either it's going to be like this life, where it's mixed with good and evil, which means this is as good as it gets, which is funny because it sucks,
Hmm.
you know. Okay, or you're going to have a separation between good and evil. Then it becomes a little bit more interesting. So if there's a separation, then what are you going to base the separation on? What really what is really the value of a human being is the intelligence. That's it.
Well, I could say that holy books don't really care about one's intelligence. They care about, in many cases, how well one subjugates themselves to their prophet or their god.
I
And
disagree.
well, unfortunately, there's Quranic evidence that shows otherwise.
No, I'm telling you that this is why you shied off from religion. I was like you. I grew up in a very religious environment. I saw my dad jumping up and down on a prayers rug, and he prays all the time and all this stuff. And we fasted, and I was like, why we're doing all of this? So I rejected all of this, and I became agnostic for about 6 7 years, and then I ran into personal issues where I had to consider the concept of a creator, and then things just rolled after that. But I believe if and this is a quote from one of the presidents, I think, or founding fathers. If there is a creator, he must appreciate intelligence, because even mercy runs out on the stupid. I mean, even the concept of mercy, which is the grand thing of what a God is he's merciful. Mercy as a concept has to run out of the stupid. How many times are you going to help a
Well,
stupid person?
that's incredibly dualistic. If is a god not just?
Okay, here's the thing. This universe is based on a duality. There is no good without evil. There's no concept of good unless you compare it to evil. There's no up without down. There's no right without left. So here's the thing. This is where the divine knowledge comes in, where as a human, it's kind of hard to calculate. But I guess God created good and bad in different people to justify each other. It just like and the example that God gave, which is, it took me so long to understand, but since I started growing tomatoes, I figured it out. When you grow tomatoes, you're interested only in the tomatoes. You're not interested in the vines or the leaves or the roots. So your entire work is based on the tomato, and so you
But
care
an
about the leaf.
intelligent gardener would know, having grown tomatoes for much of my life, that if the vine and leaves are sick, the tomatoes will never be good. If the
Correct.
soil is poor or the roots are miserable, that you will never grow good tomatoes.
Correct. But at the end, you take the tomatoes and you burn the rest.
The rest has served its purpose.
Correct. And so the stupid serves the smart. The evil serves the good. It's a duality. So in order for you to understand good, you need to see evil in front of you. So you go, oh, I get it. So this is good and this is evil. So that duality is not really a bizarre thing. And since it's a simulation, you're just supposed to, you see, so if you gravitate towards good, you must be good. And if you gravitate towards evil, you must be evil. And it's based on intelligence, because it's very hard to tell what is good from evil without intelligence.
Well, sure. Intelligence is a difficult concept to kind of parse out.
It's really easy. It's really easy.
Well,
I figured it out. Hold on, let me tell you
okay.
something.
Okay, let's hear it.
Intelligence is very difficult to quantify because it's so huge. But you can quantify stupidity, and stupidity, the lowest denomination of stupidity. I'm sorry, the lowest denomination of intelligence is the ability to distinguish. Okay, and this is very important because beyond this ability, you're considered either there's no intelligence, like a rock cannot distinguish anything, or stupid. You have the intelligence, but you just can't use it. But if you can distinguish whether light from darkness, and you can make the plant grow because of the light and all the chemicals that work with it, whatever it is, as long as you can distinguish, you have intelligence. A one-cell organism is intelligent versus a rock or a couple of atoms connected to each other. And even atoms can be intelligent, by the way. And that's where my argument comes in with my book. But my point is, I lost it because I branched too much. We started with because intelligence is really, yeah, exactly. So so when you define intelligence, you define it by defining what is the lowest denomination of intelligence, which is the ability to distinguish. And then the highest form of intelligence is the ability to distinguish good from bad. And good from bad could be constructive versus destructive, fractal versus non-fractal, grows versus not grows, beneficial, not beneficial. So it comes down to two abilities. Stupid people lack two abilities. The
Okay,
abilities.
so
No, just let me finish this. Let me finish this.
sure.
Stupid people lack two abilities: the abilities to distinguish patterns and the ability to connect the dots between patterns. And so life is all patterns, and eventually it should point you to a creator.
In Islam, from what I can garner, the delineation between stupid and smart under your rubric here would be the smart are those who follow Muhammad and Allah and those who don't,
No,
based upon
no,
the scriptural understanding.
no,
So,
no.
so hold on. So someone like me, who's an atheist, who in the written language of the holy texts of Islam blasphemes regularly, because I'm smart and can differentiate between good and evil and engage regularly in good acts, I can, in this potential afterlife, once this potential or this stated simulation ends, can go on to the, if the exists in the good evil side of thing, go on to the good side.
You just have one claw, one simple claw. You cannot offer the creator anything. There's nothing you can offer him. You can't offer him even your body, because he gave you the body. He created everything. So there's nothing to offer the creator at all.
So
from
you
your
don't.
perspective.
So
the only
Islam
thing
is irrelevant to this then.
no. So the only thing you can offer the creator for your work to count, for the good deeds that you count, that you're talking about, is for you to acknowledge the creator. I mean, you can't be rewarded by something you didn't
And
acknowledge.
what's the punishment for not acknowledging the creator? Regardless if it's the god of the Abrahamic god or a Hindu god or a Nordic god, or even if I just choose to recognize Jesus instead of Muhammad, what is the punishment for that then? Then am I stupid because I haven't chosen the correct one?
No, your work is not going to be counted, because whatever you attributed to the wrong person, to
So
the
okay,
wrong God.
then we run into this problem here that
But
creationists often forget is if my acts don't matter, if my body doesn't matter, if nothing I do matters based upon my choices,
your behavior patterns.
Okay, so but then if I am created, how do I have a choice in my behavior?
Because your behavior is governed by your brain.
And if my brain is created,
okay,
that's not evolved, is
well,
not
okay,
coming from a neutral,
exactly.
secular, atheistic source.
Just like your body, you can be weak and you go to the gym and you work out and you improve your body and you get the strength that you need to do whatever function you want. What you do the same thing with your brain, and the way you do it is not by submission and humiliation to God, but by putting your head on the ground and making sure that the blood flows into your frontal lobe so you make decisions properly. And you do that on a regular basis, 5 times a day.
Well, medically, that's not really how that system works. But the other side of it, theologically speaking, is it's not
medically is true, because we've proved that decision making happens in the frontal lobe.
Yes, but it's a non sequitur to say that because you've leaned forward, that there's more oxygenated blood reaching that area, which
well, if you don't eat, you can't think. You need blood into your head. I mean, so obviously
that's a product of glucose, not
correct.
blood.
No, if you lack oxygen, you also start. I mean,
you stop doing a lot of things.
well, exactly. So my point is, I had to. Okay, I had to understand why am I putting my head on the ground. It was very important to me, because I don't want to be a sheep. I want to understand why I'm doing this. And when I discovered that it actually helped. Do you know how it happens? This is how it happens. I just want to tell you. My wife prays all the time, and I didn't used to pray as much. One time she decided to buy a car. And after we saw 2 cars, Toyota and a Honda, we decided that we were going to go and make an offer. But before we go, she said, wait, I want to pray. And I sat down while she was praying going, I mean, is there an angel who's going to come down all the way from heaven to tell her buy the Toyota, not the Honda? Really? And all these people that are doing all these wrong mistakes, God's not sending them, but just because she goes and pray that God is going to stop everything and give her the answer. And then I started thinking, well, maybe the behavior. And I realized that after I looked at the science is that, hey, having that position does help blood come to your body, and criminals do have small frontal lobe. So does this exercise increase the frontal lobe by size? I'm gonna say maybe it does. That's why God said bow. Otherwise, it makes no sense. His kingdom cannot
Well,
grow.
no, bowing is an act of reverence to something that exposes one's vitals to the person there. It's an act of saying, I am no threat to you. It's something
No,
we have done.
no.
Animals do it regularly in the animal kingdom.
I understand, but I mean, for God to command me to bow on the ground facing Mecca, okay, there has to be something behind that. It's not just by obey and I will reward you, because it's not about obeying. It has to be about intelligence. So if I don't understand why I'm doing it, maybe I need to think about it harder. Maybe I need to figure out, for example, God said, for example, let's make it really simple. God said, don't kill each other, right?
Okay.
Okay. We
Sure.
can think about that. It makes perfect sense. Don't kill each other. Why would you kill other people?
Hard to have a cohesive society if killing was allowed. Yes.
Correct. And so you can say, well, that's stupid law. But to us, it makes perfect law. But then he says, don't have sex before marriage. That could be a stupid law, but maybe it's not, because if you don't have children out of wedlock, it's a little bit better to have a better society. Maybe, maybe if you're too young, you're going to
Mhm.
damage your
And if
life.
and I understand why. If a man says this, it doesn't have a lot of weight behind it. But if a deity says this, hey, that's got some potency.
No, it should be intelligent if an ant said it, because intelligent ideas is intelligent. It doesn't matter who says it.
So if the thing I'm still struggling with here is when we talk about intelligence and how we're going to differentiate those people, there are issues that come down to how one can go about in their behaviors in a just manner. When you have passages that says obey Allah and his messenger, but if they reject it, then truly Allah does not love those who reject faith. If that is the statement and that is the actionable phrase which people will then move upon, if I reject, then how does that work out for me? If it's written in a scriptural text, which you said if it's in the Quran it has to be true, how can I go about rejecting Allah and his messenger and not being able to be loved and move on to the other side, if there is such a thing, without ending up in the less good scenario, despite my intelligence?
That's what I tried to explain to you earlier. The only thing you can offer the creator is acknowledgement. That's it.
And
That's it.
that's something I will not do.
Right. So
Right.
so if you don't, if the only thing that you can offer him you're not willing to do, then nothing counts.
Nothing counts. So it's just accept nihilism.
Well, I mean, for example, if I don't acknowledge you, does it matter if I praise you or something? I say you don't really, it's a contradiction of a concept here. It's like the whole awareness, like I am aware, I'm self-aware, I am one, I am who I am. That acknowledgement that I give myself, which is encompass self-respect and all this stuff, you're no longer willing to offer it to another being. And you don't even have to see the other being. It's the intelligence behind that, and just the acknowledgement. So in my opinion, and from my understanding the scripture, if you have an atom worth of of respect and faith, even if you hide it or even if you're struggling with it, God will consider it and will reward you for it. But that's why I said you could be agnostic versus an atheist who says there is no God, there is no creator, and then you're just denying the only thing that you can offer the creator, and everything collapse. If you
Yes, but
acknowledge there's a
again,
but if you acknowledge
there's
there's a
called strong
creator but you don't
atheism
follow the
there.
law, if you acknowledge there's a creator and you don't follow the law, it's a completely different scenario.
Yes, and that's something for the faithful to sort out. But if us who do not have a God, who do not follow His laws and follow our own laws, which seem to be not so prone to violence in the end, how the structure that we're being invested now, the source for this is coming from. Why I'm resisting
Your
this so
reward
much.
could be here. Your reward could be here. I mean, you're pretty much cashing in this simulation. So
That
you're cashing in, because obviously if you go against the laws of the universe, you get punished anyway. It doesn't matter. I mean, God or not God, jump out of a 10-story building and you're going to die. So if you go against the laws, you're going to be punished anyway. So if you're going with the laws, whether you acknowledge the creator or not, you're going to prosper anyway. So you're going with the law. I mean, smile at people, people smile at you. So all of these things are
mhm.
going to happen, and you're going to get the reward. But if you go to the second life, if you go to the next life, again, you look at it, work it out backwards instead of forward. That's when it made sense to me. It's like, okay, if there is a life afterwards, then what kind of a life is this? And the only
Yes,
problem I have with this life is the good and evil.
and what I can say from the atheistic position is that we're not the least bit concerned. I'll say for myself, I'm not least bit concerned if there's an afterlife, because to me, that's something that I'll have to deal with when that happens. Just like I have a doctor's appointment in 2 weeks. I'm not going to rehearse what I'm going to say to my doctor now because it's irrelevant. I'm not at my doctor's appointment. I get nothing of that. I'm concerned about this life and what I can do in this life. And now I exist in a framework in this life where there's other individuals out there that call me a kafir, view me as a kafir, view me as an other, an outsider, an unbeliever. And those individuals hold very harsh views about me using a holy book which defined me as a kafir, as an unbeliever, and then justifications, and not only justifications, but specific prescriptions on how to deal with me. Whether or not they conquer me, do I get subjugated? Do I become a demi? Do I have to pay the jizya? Do I have to convert? Like,
But,
what's the
by the way,
consequence?
I just want to clear one thing. The jizya is just
Mhm.
tax. It's just tax. It's just because you're part of the republic, you pay tax. The Muslim pays tax, but just like you have an income tax and a property
A
tax,
demi pays a specific
no,
tax,
it's the same
not
amount.
by
It's the same amount. It's the same amount as a Muslim in the republic. It's a republic. It's a theocratic republic, and you pay taxes. And if you believe or not believe, you pay taxes. Period. And so it's not about subjugating or anything like this. But
well, you're not
what you
allowed to own
said
a
is true.
business if you're a
But
demi. You can't
what
own
you
your own business. You can't possess weapons.
yes, you can own your own business. You can do all this stuff. You can join the military. You can do all this stuff. You are called a, I'm going to use the Arabic word just if anyone is listening. You are labeled as mu'ahid, which means you have a treaty with the republic. You're a citizen of the republic. Now, you get scholars who will make you lower and blah, blah, blah. I don't know about that. But from my perspective, and I don't agree with that. But from my perspective, you're an equal person in the republic. You have all the rights because the republic is about the collective. It's not about Muslims versus non-Muslims. Because it allows the non-Muslims to be part of it, so it has to treat them equally. But that said, what you're saying is absolutely true because ISIS justifies what you're saying. There
Yes,
are a bunch of nuts who are going around taking a holy book, reading it backwards, and if they get a hold of you, they will subjugate you.
well,
Absolutely.
it's not they read. Well, I understand what you're saying. It's an idiom there, but they specifically spend a lot of attention on chapter 9 of the Quran, right? The sword chapter, if you will.
By the way, that chapter is called the forgiveness. It's funny.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess that's what you have to ask for very quickly before you're killed, because there's many prescriptions and methods on how you're supposed to kill people in that chapter. There's a lot of
By the way,
sword swinging.
By the way, that chapter 9, this is how it starts because I'm looking at it right now. It says, "Bara'atun min Allah wa rasuluh ila alladhina ahadtum min al-mushrikeen." This it starts with, "This is a declaration from
Mhm.
God and His Prophet to the ones who have made a truce with from the non-believers, or not from the non-believers, from the ones who make partners with God, because God separates people to three: believers, non-believers, and people who believe but they have it backwards and they're making partners with God.
In other words, people of the book.
No, no, no. The Jews are not mushrikeen. They don't make partners with God. They have one God, and it's the Christians actually that do that.
But tell me this, if this is true or not. I believe it to be so. There's 114 surahs, and only two do not start with the phrase translated "in the name of the merciful, the compassionate." The first chapter and the ninth chapter.
No, it's the first chapter actually. It starts
And
with
then,
it, but the
yeah,
first chapter, but the ninth chapter does not start with it because it has it included inside of it. But yes,
but why do we have the trend of it showing up in the start of 112 different chapters?
because it has a mathematical pattern, and I figured it out. So here's the thing. If you, I'll share this with you. It's kind of wacky, but um, entertain me and humor me.
Certainly.
Um, and thank you so much. You've been very kind. And I enjoy this conversation.
Me
You
too.
know,
It's not inherently adversarial, but we do challenge each other on particular points to see how we respond, and that's the whole point of this. We're exploring an idea. We're not
absolutely.
attacking each other for holding that idea.
And it's funny that Sam and Nawaz wrote that book as if like it never happens. It always happens.
Oh yeah.
Um,
It's interesting because where Majid Nawaz came from, being someone who was equivalent of an ISIS fighter. He was fully into the literal reading of the harshest parts of the Quran and acting upon it. Right?
and
He
and
got
by,
prison
and
for it.
by the way, I had the same opportunity, but I saw stupidity in that attitude. So I don't know why he didn't, and then he blames the Islam and everybody because of this. But I agree. Okay, um,
Anyways, your theory.
what we were talking about? Now I'm thinking about Nawaz.
You said it's all mathematical pattern. All the surahs
The
start or
surahs. Okay,
sunnahs. Sorry,
so
Yeah, surahs. I
yeah,
was getting those two confused.
yeah, Islam uh, um, is based on the cube of Abraham. Okay, that cube
Is
that
this the
everybody.
cube that's in Mecca?
Yes,
That's likely probably just a
right.
potentially a landed meteorite from one point in time.
Oh, just
It's some.
one piece of it. Just one little
Okay.
rock. Then
Okay.
the rest is just regular rocks.
Oh, that's what I thought about that. I'm thinking if that was the size of that freaking meteor, it would have left a lot larger of a hole.
Yeah, it's just a little tiny. You know.
Okay, thanks.
And,
Thanks for
and by
clearing
the
that
way,
up.
I've been to Mecca. I've already done my pilgrimage.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I've completed my faith.
Hmm.
Um, so the cube represents the republic. It represents few things. Okay, it represents um, uh, I don't want to share everything, I guess, but it represents faith and represents a third thing. So I figured out three things that the cube represents. But ultimately, it represents the republic. Okay, and um, so everything is based on the cube, and the cube have 6 faces. So the number 6 is very important for the Muslim from a mathematical point of view, because his faith is also based on 6 things, which, if you want me to repeat them, uh, he believes in God. He has faith in God. That's 1. In
Hmm.
the angels. That's 2. The books of God. That's 3. The messengers of God. That's 4. The the um, the what God ordained, the judgment of God, okay, destiny, whatever you want to call it, that your story was written before you even were created, okay?
Yeesh.
Yeah, because there's no um, free will is kind of a wacky
Well,
concept,
I think free will doesn't exist for a different reason, but
right?
please continue. There's one
Okay,
more.
and there's one more, which is Judgment Day. So you have 6 things that your faith is based on, and this is from a hadith, which is the only hadith that I have zero doubt that is true, because it's not a hadith by Muhammad. It's actually Gabriel walked into the tent with a bunch of people and Muhammad there, and he said to him, "What is faith?" And he said 6 things: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the cube is 6. Now take a look at the number of surahs. The surahs are 119, right?
114, I believe.
I'm sorry, 114. And the word that you said that starts with every chapter, which is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which is really hard to translate, but it translates in the name of Allah, and that's the name of God, Allah.
Mhm.
Anyway, it's a
The
4-letter word.
merciful.
Yeah, not the merciful. It's actually, if you can take mercy and polarize it to 2 types,
Mm.
then it becomes the merciful, but it's polarized. So
Yeah, Ibn Waraq were translated to the merciful, the compassionate.
no, it's not. It's not the merciful. It's the merciful. It's one word, mercy, but it's polarized to two directions. And the one direction is that I am merciful, so I am kind to you, and I am merciful, I will punish you to protect you from being stupid.
Okay.
You get it? So
Yes.
sometimes you break a leg instead of dying. So God is merciful because So there's the mercy comes in both. Just like you raise a child, you grow them and you give them confidence, but at the same time you yell at them, or you reprimand them
Sure.
with mercy.
With mercy.
Right. So
Yes.
that's the polarization. So in the name of God, the merciful, with that polarization, those are 19 letters. So you take 114 divided by 19, you get 6.
Hmm.
Okay, and back to the cube. And everything is based on 19 and 6. And the 19, there are 19 angels guarding hell, or whatever that universe that we're talking about. And by the way, let me tell you why hell is fire. Because again, the concept of this world is to make structures. And you do, whether you like it or not. You have a structure with your family, you have a structure with your wife, your children, your society, your whatever it is, and you build stuff. You make cool food, that's a structure, and then you eat it and you destroy it and you build other structure and all this stuff. And so you can either build positive structures or negative structures. Like negative structures would be making bombs that kill people and creating wars and all this stuff, or doing any negative stuff, but it's still a structure. So if you and that's why the cube is the structure. It's a pattern. It's a fractal pattern. So if you had a bad structure, you're going to end up in a universe where no structure could exist, because the nature of that universe is the breaking down of structures, i.e., fire, where fire is just a pattern of breaking structures, breaking the bonds between everything.
Yes, and something like fire has also been viewed in many other cultures as a cleansing force, an important force for individuals to refine their faith, refine their goodness. That
Yeah.
the bad elements, and we see this, a lot of Nordic ones refer to the forging of weapons. To melt iron down, you have to use extreme heat and to burn away the impurities.
Maybe if I share this portion of the story, it would make sense. Uh, uh, uh,
Well, this will have to be the last little bit of our conversation here. My time is now running thin.
no problem. And actually, I can't believe we
Two
went this
hours.
long. Yeah, I know, this is fun. Um, uh, uh, God created a being out of fire for a purpose, which is to come into play when the human is born or the human is created, to be an example of negative behavior. So you have the devil thrown into the game so you can have good and evil, so you can distinguish and compare. Because if you don't compare to distinguish, you have no intelligence, and that's the idea. And by the way, I don't view you as an atheist or blah blah blah. You're not an atheist until you die. Before that, you're in a exploration mode, just like everybody, and you could flip at any moment.
Yes, and I think that's the position that the vast majority of atheists themselves actually hold, is that you have very few strong atheists out there. Those are the individuals who will say to you, with absolute certainty, there is no God. And most atheists will look at that and say, well, that's an absurd statement because that's outside of your realm of knowing. No
And
human could actually make that claim.
it's counterintuitive to vilify you. I mean, the Quran does not vilify the disbeliever in this life. He's saying at the end, this is what's going to happen. But uh, uh, there's no reason to vilify you because I'm alienating you.
Mhm.
And if it's intelligence the key, then I'm sure if you're intelligent, you're going to grasp it at some point. It's just going to take you time, just like everybody else. It took me time.
Possibly. My intellectual journey has brought me to the conclusions, many of the conclusions which I've shared with you here, in that there, in my best estimation, there can is a very, I'm certain that there is no interventive God, but I cannot say that there is no creator, that human morality is something that is developed by humans and is actually better for it, not coming from gods to that place. These are things that I have come to, and it's hard to say that. Would I ever change that position? Well, it would probably require a significant amount of evidence to convince me otherwise.
Yeah, but
It's
it's not
almost
fair to say
impossible to do.
there will be no evidence that will change. I think life is too surprising for anybody to make any assessment. So if you're
Indeed.
open-minded and you're merciful and you're nice and you have an open mind, you go in this life as a spectator. There's no
Yeah.
point. There's no point to there's no value in demonizing everyone unless they're really criminal and it's kind of everybody can see it, which is the same the case with ISIS, because we both stand on the same side against ISIS.
Indeed, we do. I want to wrap it up here. So thank you, Cam, for your time and chatting. We covered lots of topics, lots of interesting points there, and something that we should do again here in the near future, and cover a couple other topics as we get a little closer to kind of functionality of some elements that we see in not only the theological side of Islam, but the political side of Islam. And one topic that I would love to hear your opinion on is the definition and workings of what has been labeled the moderate Muslim. What makes a moderate Muslim? How to move away from it, and so forth. And I've got some interesting theories on that. That's where the book I Want to Write comes in, and maybe if you're interested, we'll really hash over that topic at a future date.
I look forward to it, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. I liked you from the first minute I watched your video. You have a really a cool um, demeanor and very logical, and I enjoyed that. So thank you so much, and I look forward to do another podcast.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on and for those kind words. We will talk soon, Cam.
Perfect. Have a great day, Mike, and thank you so much.
You too. Bye for now.
Bye bye.